it's a pleasure to be here and, of course, watch the ticker with participants rising. It's always good to know we've got a healthy group, and I want to point out again, sort of administratively, it's not a lecture really, although I can jaw with the best of them. But if you ever have a question as we're going forward, feel free to ask. If you have a comment, feel free to chime in. Of course, I'm looking to Steve to co-moderate, and you might have some thoughts or comments or what have you as we go forward. So hopefully a little bit of interactive, behavior as I talk. Now, last week I spoke about the real estate industry as a whole, and it's not an indictment of the real estate industry, but it is a commentary, what I was talking about, of the industry as a culture. The fact that really traditionally, and I'm have gotten the real sense that yes, in North America, but also in South Africa, traditionally there are certain things that are pushed, if you will, that you should be doing as an agent. And that's also a modern phenomenon that has further impacted the dysfunction that can happen in the industry. And again, it's not in terms of the way the industry is run administratively by the governing body or whatever. It has to do again with these cultural, traditional, and modern influences. And this surprises agents when they hear these examples. I was doing a little overview last week after our call about what those things were. I was talking about the idea that the real estate industry is really set up as a future model, the idea of building business off into the future. And that is a valid and logical concept, but the fact is that means you're really not in the game today. And there is an alternative to all the traditional and modern and all the coaching and training and everything that's there in the industry about building for the future. And that is a now model. That is something that we're going to talk today about specifically in depth. Also, there's this whole idea about all the things you got to do. Real estate creates a lot of activities. It's rain creates water, and you got to know the difference between rainmaking and water management. And far too many agents get caught up in all the water management, but they're not really doing any rainmaking, that is business generation. And so that becomes a real problem. There's also this way of thinking, and this will be the topic for one of our upcoming times together. But real estate agents and people around the world, just in general, don't understand how opportunity works, and they don't realize how they are, in fact, held in check because of it. And this is a literally life-changing talk on how opportunity works. But still, the paradigm exists in the real estate industry that people, although philosophically believe in abundance and philosophically, would like to have more opportunity, they don't understand how those things work as phenomena, the mechanics of it, and it holds them back. And then this whole modern influence that we have today that agents are faced with, that when I got in the business, frankly, over 30 years ago, was not exactly the same way. The influence was still there, but today, communication can happen in so many ways. You've of course got texting and email, and don't forget social media and the whole internet thing. Of course, there are other ways too, mailings, and you have advertising. Here in the States, you'll see people buy billboards along the auto route, with their power pose and call me, I do it for less, stuff like that, trying to communicate, but it's indirect. Indirect means you do something that goes out towards the public with the hope that the public does something coming back to you. And what you really need is direct communication. And that's something that we'll be talking more about as well today, direct conversation, whether on the phone or face to face. And then I also mentioned that the industry is steeped in what I call a presentation approach. A presentation approach is when you're putting on a show, you're making an impression, you're being the expert, you're giving advice, you're outreach beyond your direct communication of any kind of advertising, marketing, is still outflow, information going away from you. And it means that agents have not really learned how to talk to people in a way that's highly effective. Now, some agents have the gift of gab, as we say. Some are comfortable chatting and having a pleasant conversation, and others are maybe more stoic, more reserved, maybe shy. And there's room actually for both, it turns out, but few talk with people in a way that's high functioning. And that will be something that we talk in depth about. And there are a few other cultural mishaps, if you will, in the real estate industry that I could add to last week just real quickly. We have a lead generation mentality in the business. We don't really have a business generation mentality. And lead generation speaks to that future model, getting leads that could someday do something versus generating business now, today, and learning what that's like. And then there is the whole idea of building and implementing systems for success, whether it's mailing systems, whether it's database management systems, whether it's advertising systems, whatever it might be. And with technology, this has run into the rampant category. And some of these are very nifty little things, of course, or super important things, but there's so much of it. And we have de-emphasized skills development. And I have a saying in the business that you don't get paid for your time and you don't get paid for your effort. You get paid for your skill. And my model is a skill model. It's a quality model, not a quantity model. So just a little overview from the last talk. And I mentioned that today we were going to really get down into detail and talk about what I wrote down as a new definition and job description for success in your business. Most agents, from my standpoint as a coach, again, that's over 30 years practicing as I am today, having averaged over a deal a week that entire time. And yes, I did a deal last week, and I did a deal the week before, and I did a deal the week before, and I'll do a deal next week. And this is a little bit shocking, actually. I'm gonna pull the curtain back a little bit on my own real estate company, which is number one in our marketplace. Actually, we have 5,000 agents in our valley, and there are 7 or 8 little communities, 40, 50,000 people each. But it's a resorty area with a year-round population as well, and fine weather, as I was saying, although in the summer you would say too hot. But out of all those agents and all the many companies and all the big brands are here, plus many regional powerhouses, and then boutique companies right down to mom and pop little outfits. My company's number one in the one category that matters to me the most, and that is closed deals per capita. So we close more deals per agent, and I've got about 150 agents, 5 offices, than any other company. And we like to think the coaching has something to do with that. But I will tell you that out of that 150 agents, less than a quarter actively really follow my coaching. You'd think everyone in my own company would do it. But, real estate can be funny, and taking a jab at it with fun. I always say 2 words that replace the words real estate are adult daycare, because getting people to do what they should be doing generally can be difficult. Now, I get it with a a sharp group like this who've taken the time on their own to show up, and they're wanting to not just go forward, they want to grow forward. It's a different feel. But a lot of times, you have people, they have their license, and maybe they do some business, maybe they don't, maybe they pay attention, maybe they don't. And so even in my own company, the participation rate is lower than I ever would have thought. And of course, my coaching, therefore, isn't for everyone. And I was just telling our producer yesterday that we're looking for the people who want what I have. We're not looking for people who don't want what I have. And we're practicing the model on ourselves with the exposing the coaching, worldwide, so to speak. And that is, to get the word out in a way that those who are interested in what we have get involved, and those who aren't don't. And it's not about a capture conversion. It's not about getting people to do anything. It's not about convincing people. So we're looking for that type of involvement. So I'm glad you're here because it's voluntary, and I know you have other things to do, like take tests. But again, the point here is that out of all the people in my company, and I know this was happening throughout our entire marketplace, because the market has shifted in the United States, and you can see the air going out of the tires a little bit as things slow down. The pace of the market, prices are softening, and agents are starting to panic, frankly. And the result of the panic is they're stopping. That doesn't necessarily mean they've given up and turned in their license, but they're not really in the game anymore. But in my company, the last couple of weeks, not one deal has happened. Not one out of 150 people, except mine. And you got to ask yourself, why is that? Because I don't take a magic pill. I don't eat magic beans. I do certain things in a certain way each day, and that's what makes the difference. And so today, talking about this, what I'll call new definition for success, and then a new job description for you as an agent, I hope will cause some heads to turn and some minds to crank, and possibly some question and comment to occur. So, okay, what is this new definition? Well, I've alluded to it already in the previous talk, and then here teeing it up at the beginning. This whole future model versus now model thing comes into the conversation again, because what people are doing and then what they'll admit to they're doing might even be different things than what they think they're doing or what they should be doing. This isn't to say that real estate agents are daft. It's to say that we get culturally indoctrinated a certain way, and then we follow that culture. There's a bit of a herd mentality that goes on there. And of course, if you were to build a future model, and get all the systems in place and get your brand built up and get a whole bunch of people to know who you are over time, and maybe get the leads to start coming in. The problem with that isn't that it doesn't work. It's that few ever achieve a great rate of success with it before they go under financially in the business. See, that's the great unknown statistic, that few agents can go from here, where they don't have the great system and the great business that creates business for them, to getting that done. The breakage, meaning the cost, the time, the know-how that you got to get, the effort, is so great that they don't make it. And that's a reality in the real estate industry. Now, some of you may have made it, and I salute you, and that's great. It is a good thing to do, assuming you can afford to make it happen. It takes money, time, effort, know-how. That's it. So this future model thing is problematic. Again, in North America, almost 90% of all real estate agents are out of the business within the first 4 to 5 years. And almost 3/4 of them are out in the first 12 to 18 months. Because again, they're not making money. Remember, we're in the business to make money. And if you take the money out of it, most agents wouldn't keep doing it. So I get it if you like real estate, and I get it if you like people, and I get it if you like being active. But take the earning money out of it, and you might be doing something else. You probably would. I remember I went into real estate sales not because I wanted to be a real estate agent, but because I was a former tennis pro who couldn't make any money, hence a tennis entrepreneur that had built up a nice little business, a company called Grand Slam Tennis Tours. And I brought people around the world to all the big events, and had a tennis school here in the desert in the winters. So in the kind of the summer months, we'd travel, and in the winter, we'd be here. But as the babies came, we couldn't keep traveling. And after 2 babes in arms around the world, we couldn't do it anymore. And so I went into real estate because it was there. Somebody told me I could make some money doing it. I didn't know anything about it. So it wasn't a passion thing. It wasn't my plan. I went into real estate to make money, to feed my family and get off the road and be present as a dad and a husband. And so here I am 31 years later. It's been very good to me. I've made tens of millions of dollars in commission. And that coaching part of me, because I was in the coaching world in tennis, never left. And that's what got me in, you could say, into coaching in real estate sales, training, teaching oftentimes. And there is a difference between teaching and coaching. Teaching is showing you how to do it. Coaching you is encouraging you to move forward with it, you could say. So again, this job description that agents have is key. And then this definition itself, this fundamental definition for what success is. And this future model, now model thing comes into play in that discussion. The thing is, in the real estate industry as a whole, certainly in North America, the way success is defined is, in fact, having a good career. It is having a good year. It is having a good second half. It is having a better quarter, a good month. Sometimes, you'll hear people say, I had a good week, and very rarely will you hear somebody say, I had a good day. We don't look at it in the right order. Your definition for success should be, from the standpoint of now modeling, making today pay, rainmaking, which can only be done in the present, should be this idea of, in fact, as I just said, making today pay. In fact, as a definition in terms of my career, one of my standards in the business is that I make my career just this week. So I'm in the business for just 1 week, and I have to do at least 1 transaction this week. That is a different mindset. And this definition of doing now business, which is the whole point, Steve, of our series, is in fact not the norm in the industry. And people are given what we call in school here, as you grow up in the US, when you're authorized to walk from the classroom to the administrative offices, you're given a pass by the teacher, because kids aren't allowed to just wander between classes. And it's called a hall pass. And when you have that hall pass, you're allowed to just wander a little bit. Now, woe be to the youngster that didn't end up in the right place very quickly, but it became euphemistic, if you will, the word hall pass, for the freedom to do whatever you want. And that is a problem in real estate sales, because in real estate sales, who do you work for? At the end of the day, in the US, yeah, it's ourselves, as we call it, independent contractors. And I don't know if you have the same exact legal setup down there, but I see Steve nodding, so that's encouraging. But the point is, you work for yourself. And traditionally, now, the worst thing that can happen between an employer and an employee, and remember, you are the employer of yourself. You are the employee. You're wearing both hats. And typically, the worst thing that can happen is that the employee quits, but then stays. And that's the average real estate agent in North America, actually. statistically, because they're not making that much money at all, if any, but they're still here. And it's an odd industry, because you can be an abject failure in terms of you're not doing any business, you're not making any money, and you could show up at the office and everybody would go, "Hey, Fred, welcome. So good to see you. I'm totally failing. I'm not making any money, but I'm totally welcome." Now, I don't think that would work at most companies. Most companies, you're going to have some accountability. You're going to have some oversight. So you have to start becoming your own best boss, if you will. And we often aren't great managers of ourselves in all ways. In some ways, we have our strengths, but what I've seen as a coach is most agents tend to wander. They suffer from the bling effect. They see a shiny object, they go in that direction. Then they see something else, they go in that direction. And they're not really able to stay on a certain track, let alone understand what that track should be. And what I'm saying is the track should be about making today pay, about shortening your career into a time frame where there's some real urgency, and not operate as if you have a hall pass and can just do whatever you want, whenever you want, which you can. You work for yourself. But if you're not doing certain things in a certain way today, your success is at risk. And you can have all the fancy systems or be building them all with the greatest of intent for down the road, and it's going to be a tough go financially, unless you are that rare individual, and I hope you are, that breaks that mold and breaks out into the big money-making scene in the business. So again,
Fred, can I
yes,
just make a comment on that? Sorry, I'm not going to make a habit of interrupting you, but
I want you to. I don't want to just be talking. So go ahead.
No, I love what you've just said, because it's not a hall pass. It's, you have to do certain things in a certain way every day, or whatever the frequency is. Because I think one of the biggest things that agents are going to need is an early win with this new job description that you are describing to us. And I think the reason many people wouldn't make the transition to the new skills of now today business is because they don't believe it's going to work. They don't believe that business is as accessible as you are saying it is. Because you are saying there is business out there, and all you've got to do is go and get it today. And what I love about the specifics of what you're saying, that there are certain tasks which can be quantified, which can be tracked, that you do today, and if you do them today, you will get results. And I would love to see everybody here implement those. I mean, obviously you're going to teach them to us in the next few weeks, but let's pull the trigger at some point and say, now everybody absolutely commit to going and doing this. Don't just learn it, go and do it. Because I think if you get an early win, I think it'll change the game, because then the belief will be there. So anyway, love that, Fred.
It's so true, and at some point we should be defining what results are, because in the business we are dominated with the idea of if you do a transaction, you're succeeding. If you don't, you're not succeeding yet, particularly if you're newer in the business. And of course, getting some traction early on is a good thing, a great thing, because it can build some confidence and give the person a sense that they are perhaps on the right track. Now, that can work both ways. I know people who are working a social media model, and at some point, somebody pings back, showing some interest in some way relative to real estate happening, and they, are so excited, and it's, my system's working, it's working, and they take that little bit of feedback there, and they apply it to continue going forward in that direction. But I regularly talk with people who are working with social media actively, And when the truth is actually drug out of them, there's very little business that's coming from it. A lot of effort, a lot of activity, a lot of hope, but actual business, not that much. Actual business that closes, a transaction that closes, the contract finishes, and you get paid. I'm not against social media, but you got to do it for quite a long time in quite an effective way to start to get that traction. And this is that whole future model thing again happening. So not anti social media. I'm just using it as an example. If you needed to open a transaction, if you needed to do a deal within the next couple of weeks, or you were going to end up with a paralyzed left arm, and you knew that was going to happen, if you did not put a contract together within the next 2 weeks, or your left arm was going to be frozen in place, and you believed it was going to be frozen in place, you wouldn't be relying on social media. No way. You'd be talking to people, which is a great segue into that job description. And remind me, don't let me get away here, because our next talk post our Thanksgiving, so in 2 Thursdays, we're going to really get into what I'll call proof about how the business is in fact here for you today, and in fact that it isn't there for you in the future. See, that's a whole paradigm shift that you've got to make if you're going to get out of this future model routine, and if you're going to effectively upgrade your job description. And so that's a big issue. But again, talking about this new definition for success, making today pay, instead of working to make tomorrow pay. There's the dichotomy right there. 99% of all real estate agents are in that future modeling example. They are working today with the hopes and intent of making tomorrow pay. Now, remember, tomorrow is a fairly concrete term. We know what it means. Today, pretty concrete. But when I change it from working to get paid now to getting paid later, it starts to take on a little bit different connotation. I may have asked last week. I don't recall exactly, but it's worth doing again here, Steve. Particularly if people wanted to raise their hands. I see some on my screen, but I don't see everybody who's here. But if you had the choice, raise your hand if you'd rather be paid sooner versus later. Which is it? Everybody's wanting to get paid sooner. Of course. I mean, this is where you think, what is this guy? Who is this guy, Fred? What is he even talking about? Of course, I want to get paid sooner, right? And yet, the way we are set up in our affairs in the industry is to get paid potentially later. And no one is talking about how do you make today pay. It's not even a conversation that's going on. Now, if somebody calls you up on Wednesday and they say, Steve, we saw this place. We got to have it. We want to write it up tonight, and we want to have it under contract before Friday. Steve's going to drop what he's doing, and he's going to do that transaction. Of course, we all would. We all want to get paid sooner. We love now business. But the concept culturally, the definition that it is about doing that regularly is not in discussion. And yet I will use my own business as an example. One of the things that makes me unique, I think, in North America as a full-time trainer is that I am a full-time agent. So I'm not preaching from the podium, I'm teaching from the trench. And the things that I talk about come from my own day-to-day practice of sales production, not a book or some theoretical oration or some traditional thing. And this is the problem with so much of the coaching, which I'm pro coaching. Go get any kind of coaching you can, pretty much. I think most of it's, valid, good stuff. That's great. But most coaches are future modeling. They're teaching you how to build into the future. And that's a good thing, but I don't want you going broke in the meantime. And don't you think that every real estate agent ought to have the skill, ought to possess in their bag of tricks the skill of making today pay. The skill that goes with waking up in the morning with no business, but by the end of the day, potentially having business. Raise your hand if you'd like to have that skill. I'm raising mine. So again, that's what we're talking about here. So the really great thing is you can take this model, you can take this definition for success, you can take this mindset and apply it to what you're already doing. It's not exclusive of anything else. If you're brand new, it could be your foundation. If you've been in the business, it can be an overlay. It's highly synergistic, and it will actually make everything else you do more profitable. So let's tune in here real close. So I've been talking about this new definition for success, doing now business versus future business, getting paid sooner versus later, working to make today pay instead of working to make tomorrow pay, saying the same thing in different ways for different listeners. All means the same thing. And this is now got to be combined with a new job description for success. Now, I've had some fun with this over the years, Steve, and made it one of my initial briefing questions when potentially talking with an agent that's new to my model who's seeking coaching. And I would ask them the question, what's their job description as an agent? And you get a lot of different answers to this. But generally, it's working towards success. It's doing things that will cause them to be successful in real estate sales. And you occasionally hear people say, my job is to serve people. My job is to show houses. My job is to list houses. You get all these varying versions or answers. But at the end of the day, the average agent does not have the job description that is going to matter the most if they want to do now business. And we've already established that everybody would rather be paid sooner versus later. So this follows this new job description, if you will. And the very best job description you can have if you're going to make today pay is talking to people. So when someone asks you what you do, theoretically, you would say, I talk to people. Now, again, I'm in real estate. There's all these different ways you can answer. But administratively, in-house here, amongst us, the job description, the top priority, the thing that's more important to do than anything else that you'll do today is talk to people. Now, if that is in fact your reality, we're on the same team. You're my brother from a different mother or my sister from a different mister. I love it. But again, most times, most agents don't have that precise definition. Now, you might say, well, wait a minute. What about all the other things I got to do? They're all second priority, third, fourth, fifth. First priority has got to be talking to people. If you want to start getting paid sooner versus later, if you want to wake up in the morning and you don't have any business, and by the end of the day, you have some actionable direction of business, if that appeals to you, if you would like to add another, I'll use dollars, but rands, I don't know what the exchange rate is right now, but in dollars, I always say if you want to add another 10, 20, 30, 40, $50,000 or more a month in commission income, you've got to adopt this new definition for success, which is now business, making today pay, getting paid sooner versus later. And you've got to make sure that you adopt or that you enhance, if you already are talking to some people on and off throughout your business, but you've got to make it your top priority. Job one, today, talking to people. If you want the good stuff to happen to you, meaning doing business sooner versus later, it must be there. Now, it's possible that some people are saying, Yeah, that's right. And I get that. And I do see some heads nodding. But there might also be some people saying, well, why is that so much more important than my social media feed? And I've alluded to this already. We've discussed it a little bit, or my advertising, or building my brand, or serving my customer. It's because those things take a lot more time to bear fruit. You see, this is something you probably haven't thought about before. Talking to people gives you the chance to succeed today. And there's nothing else you can do that brings that into play. And that is why talking to people today as your top priority should be your job description. Anything else you do other than talking to people, the odds of identifying business in the now plummet. And there it is, laid bare for analysis. When you're talking to someone, you have a chance. When you're not talking to someone, you don't. So all of you whose hand went up when I said, would you like to get paid sooner versus later, must now align yourself, if you do truly want to get paid sooner versus later, with this new way of looking at talking to people. Talking to people is important because you have a shot. When you're doing other things, you don't, except maybe in the future someday. Think of it this way. I probably mentioned this last week, Steve. I can't recall exactly, but I talk about this thing called the production model. And as you all likely know, I've got an online learning program that agents pay money for to go to school on, so to speak, this model and really learn it. And the production model is based on what we call the 4 cornerstones of success in real estate sales. So 4 key things: mindset, what you're thinking; day set, what you're doing; word set, how you're doing it; and goal set, actually doing it. That's it. That's what the program is based on. And that's the only teaching I do, is based on those things. Okay, so the mindset piece, what you're thinking, is based on one of the 4 elements you have to have in your business if you're going to spark now business in your career. You have to have these 4 things going on, these 4 base elements. Turns out that success with now business is a compound element. A compound element is a combination of certain base elements. A little chemistry lesson there. So that first element you have to have is opportunity. And we're going to talk about that a lot. Some more today and then on the next one. Really in depth. But without opportunity, what's the point? Number 2 is you have to have possibility. See, if there's no possibility for success, again, why do it? Then you have to have discovery. If you're going to succeed, you have to be able to identify the new business. Okay? It's not necessarily going to walk up to you, which is, of course, what all the future modeling is attempting to have happen. Do all that advertising, all that marketing, all that social media, all that branding, and over time, it will train people when they're ready to contact you. And it works for some, but for most, it does not. Not effectively, not regularly, and not before they go broke. So you have to have these 4 elements: opportunity, possibility, discovery, and then that 4th element, urgency. I mentioned it a moment ago. If you don't have urgency, you're going to wander. If you don't have urgency, you're probably not going to stay on an effective track. If you don't have urgency, you're not going to make today pay. You're not even going to try. So you got to have those 4 elements. And talking to people is representative of number 2, possibility. If you are talking to someone, it's like American baseball. I don't know if you follow that at all. But the idea of hitting the ball with a bat is central to success in that sport. And you have a pitcher, someone throwing the ball at the batter. It's a lot. I think cricket and baseball are similar in certain ways. There's a ball flying around and somebody hitting it potentially, somebody catching it. Okay, so they're similar. And in baseball, you get your turn at bat in a rotation. If there are 9 players on the squad, each one comes up to bat. You get out. And if you have 3 outs, your team loses their time at bat, and the other team comes up and gets their chances. So the anecdote or analogy, really better word, is when you're the person that's at bat, you now have a chance to get a hit. If you're not at bat, you don't have a chance. You have to wait your turn. In real estate sales, talking to someone is being at bat. If you're not talking to someone, you're not at bat. And you don't have a chance. And so you get busy doing other things designed to have a chance some other day, and the loop of the future modeling comes into play and takes over. So when you're talking to people, you have a chance to succeed today. When you don't talk with people, you take yourself essentially out of the game. In fact, every other thing you can do statistically, if you measure it over a period of a few weeks, is almost a 0 chance of success happening. If you talk to someone, you have a real chance. Now, remember, the batter that hits the most balls probably has the most effective swing. Their technique is better. And so talking to people is essential, but you must then add the skill of how you talk with people in a highly effective manner in order to actually start getting those hits. And this is why skill is such a big deal. What are we taught in the real estate industry? We're taught that it's a numbers game. In fact, we're taught that it's about quantity, not quality. And we're taught to ask questions because I think we all can deduce that finding things out from people is important, but we work off a list. We ask a few key questions when we're talking with someone, and we tend to try and close on them in some way, shape, or form, or wag our tail the hardest, be the nicest and the friendliest over time. But we don't really have a technique for identifying opportunity that's there under the surface in some way, shape, or form. We don't have a technique for doing that. And this is the difference between my own behavior and the model that I teach and agents who learn the model and other agents. They're thinking that opportunity is there. It's just not apparent where, but it's there. Job 1 is talking to people in what we call discovery mode. And we're going to talk as we go through this series in depth about the skills that go with talking with someone in discovery mode. But I will offer as examples from my own business, let's just say the last 2 weeks. And I may have mentioned this last week, but the deal that I did when I woke up in the morning, I did not know I was going to do. When I was having lunch, I did not know I was going to do that deal. But by 9 p.m. that evening, we were under contract. And another $30,000 was coming my way within 2 weeks. And I told you that was 2 weeks ago. We close on that today. So I have a check for $30,000 coming to me today from something I did 2 weeks ago within 12 hours. Now I bring that up to show you the power of the production model, of now modeling. You can bring in serious money. Who would like to add another $30,000 a month to their bottom line? Raise your hand. So there you go. Now, here's the thing. This week, I did it again. Is it a fluke or is it regular? It's actually regular with me. Now, what happened just a couple days ago was I was told, in order to hold my new grandbaby that's due on December 3rd in the hospital, I would have to be inoculated. And there's a little list of inoculations. And two of them I was needing to get. And so I went to a pharmacy. I don't know if you call it an apothecary or what, but a place where I could go get, some people, maybe they have to go to the doctor's office, but where I could go get both an annual flu shot, not a COVID shot, and something called a Tdap, which is tetanus and whooping cough and a couple things. And I got two shoulders, so I guess I'm going to get two shots. And I head into the pharmacy. And you will have to set the scene because flu season is starting here. Just, again, not COVID, but just the annual flu. And it was 5 p.m, and there were a lot of people there, 15 people in line. People were frustrated. I remember one woman yelled, I'll drop the expletive, but, would somebody move this blank line forward? She yelled out. People were tense and frustrated, end of the day kind of a thing, trying to get home for dinner. I had an appointment because I had tried to drop in a couple of days before and they'd turned me away saying, you need to have an appointment. So I'd gone online and set up an appointment, and I showed up, a few minutes prior to my appointment, and this line and this tension was in the air. And there's a consult window and a pickup window. And I went to one of the consult windows and announced that I was here. And with a little bit of resistance from some of the staff, finally, the pharmacist turned around and said, I'll help you now, sir. And brought me into a consult room, which is just a little cubicle that's privacy. And, you take off your sweater, you roll up your sleeves, and they start giving you the vaccines. And when I'm seated in that little room, I said, now, what's your name again? And the woman says, Danielle. And I said, oh gosh, Danielle, I'm so pleased that you have the time to help me here. I see it's busy out there. And she said, well, you have an appointment and they don't. And I said, well, I appreciate it. And she goes, well, it's my pleasure. And I said, now, how long have you been working here? And she says, less than a year. And I said, really? Less than a year? How so? Where did you work before? And she said, well, I was in school before. And I said, oh, okay. So you're kind of new to the business? And she said, well, yeah. And I said, where did you go to school? And she said, well, first down in Alabama. I said, well, are you from Alabama? And she said, no, I'm from Los Angeles. I said, why Alabama? And she said, well, my dad went to this college down there in Tuskegee, and I followed tradition there. And I said, is that where you got your certificate for pharmacology? And she said, no. I moved back here for that. And I said, really, where did you get that? And she said, Loma Linda, which is a medical university between where I live and Los Angeles, about an hour away. And I said, oh my gosh, so where's your family from? And she said, Los Angeles area. I said, oh my goodness. And I said, so, but you live here in La Quinta, that's the little town where I live in the greater Palm Springs area, about 2 hours from Los Angeles. And she said, well, not exactly. And I said, well, what do you mean by not exactly? Now, remember, my sleeves are rolled up and she is literally jabbing me while we're talking. And she said, well, I'm living with my dad. And I said, really? Where does your dad live? And she says, Banning. Well, Banning is 50 minutes from this pharmacy. So I quickly deduce her commute. She's losing a couple hours a day, probably going back and forth. And I said, oh my gosh, that's a bit of a drive. Why are you doing that? And she says, well, I don't have to pay rent. I said, well, why haven't you purchased a home? And she said, believe me, I've been trying. I said, really? How have you been trying? She says, well, I've been working with a couple of different agents and trying to find properties, but it's not working out. And I said, well, why is it not working out? And she says, well, we can't find anything under $600,000 that I like. And I said, well, what is it you like? And she told me, and we established what her needs were. And I said, well, it's funny that this all comes up because that's what I do. I help people buy and sell opportunity properties. It's a little thing with me, people. I tend not to say I'm a real estate agent, and I'm not against saying that. I just tell people I help people buy and sell opportunity properties, and it works for me. And she goes, oh, kind of semi, stabbing me in the other arm at this point, And I said, and let me ask you this. If I knew of a property that no one else really knew about that was going to be coming to the market, that was a cute 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, redone, new floors, new windows, new appliances, new air conditioning, heating units, in a great little location. In fact, only several blocks from where I myself live and have raised my family. And you could get it for under $500,000, maybe under $450,000. Would you want to know about it? And she goes, well, yeah. And I said, well, let me ask you this. If I was to tell you about it and you wanted to buy it, would you agree to work with me and no one else to do that? And she says, well, yes. If you show it to me, you should get the benefit. And I happen to agree with that. And so when she finished up, this is not much longer than what I just told you in terms of this case study and how it happened. This is just a couple of days ago. She says, when I'm putting my sweater back on, she grabs her phone. She says, now I need your number. So I said, well, I need yours. So we traded numbers. And then when I left, I thanked her. And then the next day, so yesterday, I texted her and I said, Danielle, it's Fred, your vaccination patient from yesterday. Just getting in touch. I've spoken with the seller. We do have a green light to see this property. You'll be the first to see it. It's going to hit the market in the MLS just after Thanksgiving. So this is your window of opportunity. Get back to me if you do, in fact, want to see the property. She texted me back. I could show you the facts. She says she wants her aunt to come with her. And that's great. And we're going to go see the property here tomorrow. So this is what it looks like. And there were techniques that went into that conversation that some of you may have followed, but that I will give name to. And I will show you how to build as techniques and skills in your own day-to-day practice of sales production. But it definitely involves these 4 elements I was talking about. I knew when I walked into that building, there was opportunity there. I just didn't know where. But I knew it was there. How is it that I know it's there? Because of the realities of life. I'm sure I mentioned this briefly last week. The realities of life are everyone is changing, fact, and everyone lives somewhere, fact. That means that everyone's real estate wants and needs are always subject to change in some way, shape, or form, or at least someone in their life is going through that effect of change on their real estate wants and needs, because everyone is changing and everyone lives somewhere. And so I know there's opportunity. It's latent. It's just under the surface, but I don't know where. So I have to have the ability to identify where. And again, if you're using the production model, you no longer are trying to build your business and get your business to happen to you, but instead you are happening to your business. You're reversing the approach. And so when I do things, might be getting an inoculation, it might be picking up my wife some Java, some coffee, It might be out for some exercise. It might be buying some new carpet. It might be taking out the trash. Or it might be holding an open house. It might be knocking on doors. It might be calling people on the phone. When I do that, I start with the assumption that there's opportunity there, but I don't know where. And so my thinking and behavior from that point on is dedicated to identifying opportunity that would otherwise be missed. And, as I was driving away from that experience, getting my two shots, my two inoculations, I found myself, Steve, asking myself, why didn't somebody else have this conversation with Danielle? Certainly, there have to be other real estate agents going in and out of that pharmacy. Why did this never occur? Why am I the one that now has access to the business when others don't? And the answer is, first of all, I know there's opportunity. I just don't know where. It's not dependent on knowing the right people. It's dependent on my behaviors and my thinking. So I know it's there. I just don't know where. And I talk to people. That's what I do. And when I talk to them, I do it in discovery mode, which is what you just witnessed with that case study. And I was using certain techniques, again, that we're going to go into in depth in this series that I'm going to show you. I'm going to pull the curtain back, if you will. And I have that urgency of not letting that opportunity slip away because my objective is to make today pay. Now, let's say nothing works out on a particular day, which is the norm, 7 days in the week. If I'm averaging a deal a week, that means I'm striking out fairly often. And that happens in American baseball, right? You get 3 chances to swing. And if the third one happens, you're out. Your chance is up. But I've found that I only need to work. Statistically, I work about 4.5 days a week in terms of real estate sales. And I work about 4 hours on those days. But I'm able to average statistically slightly more than a deal a week for 31 years running. No branding, no marketing, no advertising, no systems, no mailings. Because I know there's opportunity, so I never suffer from lack. Almost every other agent doesn't believe there's opportunity, so they do other things. And I make my priority talking to people. I talk to typically 10 people by 10 a.m. in the morning. Then I talk to 5 people in 3 groups that I choose during the day. And then I end my day with 5 more calls, typically. They are calls, at 5 p.m. So my day is infused with the act of talking to people. And most agents, it is not. And I talked about this, I think, last week also. The godometer, does that ring a bell with anybody? A godometer, does that ring a bell with anybody? No?
No.
Okay.
We got about 1 minute left, Fred.
Okay, a godometer is a thing I invented, and I hook you up to it with this little maneuver right there. And if you don't tell the truth, you get struck by lightning. So tell me the truth. How many people spoke to more than 10 people yesterday? Watch out now. You don't get struck by lightning.
Maybe put it in the chat roll, guys. Put a comment in there if you spoke to more than 10 people yesterday.
And if you did, again, I salute you. Fantastic. But the truth is most agents didn't speak to more than 5 people. The truth is most agents don't speak to more than 1 or 2 people more than 1 or 2 or 3 days a week. That's the truth statistically in North America. They're not talking to people. So they don't have the chance.
While we're wrapping up here, I wanted to ask you, okay, so today it's a new job description. The job description is talking to people.
Yes.
And you've kind of peeked the curtain back on when you talk to people. There's certain skills whereby you have what you are calling a conversation of discovery, and
Yes.
there's certain skills about bringing out the opportunity, and that's all driven by this worldview, this paradigm that opportunity is everywhere.
Yes.
So, I mean, I love the picture you've painted for us today. I wanted to ask you, if you were to look back over your last, say, 52 deals over the last year, how many of those of that business would have come from the 25 phone calls you make a day? So that's kind of a warm list, people you know, versus the unprompted head knocking, I think you called it last week, where you meet someone who jabs you in the arm and you never know them before. So you're face to face, physically, you're meeting people. What percentage is coming from the calls, and what percentage is coming from getting out and just meeting new people?
Over half my business is the latter, is brand new people, almost 60%. Yeah, it surprises people. Then about another 20 some percent would be from people that I might have known in some way, shape, or form. And I do have some past client referral that happens. I've been in the business 31 years. Of course, I'm going to have some of that, but it's less than 15%. So
that's incoming business.
People who call me and say, Fred, would you help me?
Yeah.
In other words, I didn't initiate that.
Whereas 80% of your business is either 60% head knocking, 20% on the phone calls. It's still
more than 80%, over 82%. Yep.
Yeah, that's crazy. Wow. Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Guys, God bless you.